Hello, good afternoon. My name is Tatu. I'm a chef and nutritionist here at Nosh. I'm afraid Angie's unavailable today. So we're going to talking about creating a slimmer you. So I wanted to discuss a topic that constantly plays on our minds, plaguing us throughout the days and the nights. It's our weight. Environmental and behavioural changes have led us down this slippery path of consciously controlling our weight. In the days of yesteryear, we wouldn't have had many concerns. In fact, we probably would have been more concerned with keeping our weight on in order to survive. However, with the introduction of large-scale agricultural cattle or poultry farming, our approach to eating has drastically changed. I mean, if you think about the effort and the time that went into feeding ourselves in the pre-farming era, even the thought of it is quite exhausting. We would have had to have substantial knowledge of seasonal foods and the time and energy to find them, to extract the root vegetables, for example. It's quite a dig to go and find a naturally grown beetroot. One must also bear in mind that we would have learnt to consume most nutrient-rich foods in order to reduce our energy expenditure, but at the same time offer us the greatest mineral content. We would want to have, loads of minerals and vitamins, phytochemicals to ensure we're functioning optimally. For example, take beetroot, high in fructose, very high in antioxidants such as anthocyanidin, as well as potassium and magnesium, all really important for, the heart of the health. And it would be a really great root vegetable worth consuming for us. Or maybe an avocado, high in a multitude of minerals and vitamins, as well as saturated and unsaturated fats. Vitamin E, the list goes on. So what I'm trying to say is the correct levels of mineral salts give us the ability to have effective muscle function. Effective muscle function gives us more energy so we can move more. So our body composition would be more what we want it to be as opposed to what it is. So this is applicable as much then as it is now. A mineral much discussed at the moment is magnesium. It's discussed at the moment because there are a lot of people who have magnesium insufficiencies and deficiencies because we don't really have that much of it in the soil in England, and therefore it's very low in the foods that we eat. It is talked about a lot. It's essential for the relaxation of our muscles, and when the levels are low in our bodies, we have a tendency towards cramps and muscle twitches as well. So magnesium, potassium and calcium are the three main minerals we require for correct muscle and nerve function. And when we have a deficiency in any of them, we start to experience slightly unpleasant symptoms. But when they're in correct balance, these three minerals, and move across the muscle and nerve membrane barriers as they're supposed to, our muscles and nerves function as they should, flexing and relaxing as they are needed. However, when they're in an imbalance, we see everything from the occasional foot cramp to twitches to myocardial infarction, or as it's better known, a heart attack. I'm not saying that, if you don't have sufficient magnesium, you're going to have a heart attack, but it is something to take into consideration to make sure that you have correct mineral balances in your body. I don't mean to cause alarm, but there's definitely a link to lack of nutrient-dense foods and a decline of health in the modern and urban human. Utter shock when I meet people who, the better part of their lives, avoid eating vegetables. When I say this, chips do not count. What we do see in the modern-day diet of the Western world is an enormous amount of animal produce. If you've ever tried catching a chicken, you might have an inkling how little animal produce we would have originally consumed. It's a tremendous feat worth every gold star your primary school teacher had ever had in their little booklets. But now we merely have to stroll into the nearest restaurant, takeaway, cafe, shop or supermarket, and we can eat a highly specialized refined meal containing a plethora of ingredients. The energy spent acquiring sustenance is minute in comparison to the energy we consume. I'm not saying that we are able to change this. Can you imagine having to run laps around your local steakhouse or swimming lengths outside your local sushi bar? I think there may be a fair few complaints. This will not change, but perhaps a more conscientious approach might aid us in maintaining optimum weight that is healthy for our bodies. Eating closer to nature, as it were, will to help us to return to a healthier way of life, including nutrient-dense plant matter, is something that, we see very much in the naturopathic diet. Emphasis on things like bean sprouts, sprouted beans, plant protein, seed vegetables, high fiber fruit and vegetables, whole grains. It's shown in numerous research trials to have an incredibly positive effect on weight management and general health. I'm not sure if you've heard of Syndrome X, but the things that come with Syndrome X, sort of diabetes, obesity, insulin resistance. I mean, things like these, and they're very, very dependent on correct nutrition. So I've diverted somewhat from the topic, but I'll try to explain why I've waffled on about this for the last few minutes. If we're consuming nutrient high foods, our bodies are functioning optimally, so they give us more stamina and more energy, and our bodies are able to exert more energy, sort of when we go to the gym and things like that. But if we are eating foods that give us nothing, basically they're sort of empty calories, we constantly feel tired and exhausted, and we end up consuming more food trying to maintain nutrient levels because we don't actually have enough. And it's not just about calories, there are calories come in all sorts of formats. And if we have, I don't know, a bar of chocolate, so you have 1,000 calories in your bar of chocolate. I mean, it's going to be a pretty big bar of chocolate, but let's say for argument's purposes. So you've got this bar of chocolate, so you can have the 1,000 calories in there, or you can have a bowl of brown rice with a bit of seaweed in it and some raw avocados, some spring onions, maybe some steamed kale, sliced red onions, and that's also going to have 1,000 calories in it. But it's all about what else is coming with it. So in your bowl of fantastic rice and green stuff and avocados, you're going to get lots of vitamin B, you're going to get magnesium, potassium, you're going to get manganese, copper, really important for producing things like that. So you have to sort of take that into consideration, where you're getting those calories from and what else they come with, and also all the sort of plant nutrients that come with them, these special chemicals that we're doing so much research into, but we still don't know that much about. Now, these things help us to have, correct enzymes so that we can break things down properly. So you've got to take that into consideration, because if we don't get the right micronutrients, not the macronutrients, the micronutrients, we're going to end up knackered and unable to do anything at all. So I've had clients who struggled for years on various diets, controlling their calorie intake, watching constantly what they eat, and they never quite get there. They never quite get to where they want to be. And I'm not talking about people who are, desperate to be waif thin, but just to have an efficient, functioning body. What we all really want. I started introducing them to a rather interesting way of eating. I'm a chef as well, so I get really into cooking and using lots of mad ingredients and combining them in very interesting ways. It keeps you interested in your food, but I also use very natural ingredients, very raw things. And these people, now that they've started to change, they're not struggling as much with this issue of retaining that last few kilos that they're desperately trying to get rid of. Full of energy, and their body composition has changed amazingly. I mean, if you experiment with yourselves and introduce things like, so long as you've got low blood pressure, you can introduce licorice tea, because it stops you getting that need for sugar, because it's actually got a chemical in it that's 400 times sweeter than sugar, so it gives you that hit, but without damaging any problems with the insulin levels and things like that. Also very, very nurturing to the adrenal glands. I'll talk a little bit about that later, but very, very important in reducing stress. Things like cinnamon as well help to balance out our blood sugar levels, so keep us from feeling starving and going for that cake. Cinnamon also prevents you from, it's got volatile oils in it, like most of the herbs and spices that we use, meaning that they have certain elements to them that help to fight off any bacterial viruses or things like that. So you see where we're going here. There are a number of different things that are good about plants, and we should all have more plant stuff in our diet, in my opinion. So this approach is something that is very much taken into consideration in this company, in Nosh. And, the way we prepare our foods and our juices, we are always thinking about the combination and what's good, and why are we wasting our time eating a certain thing? Is it going to benefit us? Could we replace it with something that's better? Do the ingredients complement one another? So, for instance, a lot of people are very concerned about protein levels, and protein levels are very important in maintaining and reaching optimum weight. If you don't have enough protein, you burn off the foods too quickly. So then you end up storing the excess because your body's thinking, oh no, I won't have enough for tomorrow. So protein is important, but it doesn't mean that you have to eat animals. So you can do protein combining things like brown rice. If you combine it with pretty much any pulse, so lentils and beans, you're going to get a complete protein. That means that you have all the different amino acids that are needed to build your body. They're called essential amino acids. Anyway, so bearing that in mind, we take into consideration these the way you combine your food. And we eat pretty good lunch here. You don't catch any afternoon slumps in our office. Anyway, we offer a range of products from a Kickstart juice fast, which is really great. Really gets you into sort of being more conscientious about your food. And then home delivered meals, cooking classes with in-depth nutritional information, support programs, cookbooks, but our very own creations to try them out. So it is out there, and it's out there with us. However, there are also a few other reasons that we can maintain excess or unwanted weight that are a little trickier to identify and rectify. They may include hormonal imbalances, elevated stress levels, food intolerances, as well as things like insulin resistance and something called ghrelin resistance, amongst others. Anyway, I'll go back to those a little bit later on. Hormone imbalances come to the forefront of conversation as it's something that is very prevalent in the modern life in which we live, especially in the urban environments, places like this, places like London. There are a few forms of estrogen, which I'm sure you've all heard of, which are found both within our bodies and in the environment that surrounds us. Estrogen primarily acts as a growth hormone on a cellular level, targeting estrogen receptor tissues. These tissues are found all over the body, but more specifically, what I'm talking about is a central part of the torso. Yeah, the car tires, as some of us may refer to them. The breast tissue, as well as adipose tissue in the upper legs. Adipose tissue is basically another word for fat tissue, the F word. With women, at certain times of the month, when the effects of estrogen peaks, we experience what seems to be like unexplained weight gain, the most inconvenient phenomenon. But this tends to go away when the estrogen level drops. If you've got excess estrogen, it doesn't go away, and you end up maintaining this excess weight, and perhaps even, it becomes a bit of a snowball effect. Excess estrogen can be due to a couple of factors, but there are two that I would like to touch on. One is internally produced excess estrogen, and the other is dietary or environmental estrogen. Sometimes one may be born with a congenital disorder, meaning a malfunction of the body that's due to a genetic alteration, be it passed on from a parent or due to a mishap during conception or pregnancy. I'll go on to talk a little bit about cortisol, but this plays a role in how the growing child is able to process insulin and glucose levels in the blood. Anyway, so in some cases, we don't know where these congenital disorders originate from. They just kind of pop up as such. In this case, we can do a number of things to help regulate the conversion, production, absorption, and excretion of estrogen, and also help us to maintain our correct body weight. The liver is the main organ that controls such things. It packs away excess, whatever it might be, and sends it off through the bowels or the urinary tract, for instance, meaning like a number 1 or a number 2. The liver must be functioning correctly, optimally, for it to do its job. So supporting the liver is really essential. There's a number of foods that we should consume to support this amazing organ. Amongst them are things like garlic, onions, and leeks. They come from the allium family, and they have high levels of sulfites, like sulfur-based compounds in them. And sulfur is basically, the liver's got 3 phases of detoxification. First of all, whatever it is comes into the liver, and it's broken down and stuck into a bit of fat. And then the next one, it's broken down and made into a water-soluble molecule, and then it's excreted in the third process. So in that second process, we need sulfur. So it's really important to have enough sulfur in your diet. Anyway, and then there are things like turnips, rocket, watercress, artichoke, asparagus, lemons, beetroot, dandelion, nettles. In fact, almost all bitter foods help to support the liver and to aid digestion. So it's really, really important to put these into the environment, into your diet, and get the kids eating them at a young age. Get them used to that taste in their mouth. If you can get a happy rocket eating child at the age of 4.5, you're doing very, very well. But, on the other hand, there might be some of us who are not born with these congenital defects, but still experience estrogen dominance. So why is that? Well, perhaps it's due to the large amounts of synthetic estrogens in our lives. And this is also a hot topic of conversation in especially the naturopathic world, but I think, much more going on into the world of the normal human beings, as I like to call. So things like plastics, fertilizers, pesticides, they all contain what's called xenoestrogens, which in other words are synthetic or man-made estrogens. They are very potent and very hard to avoid. Think about like non-organic foods, especially the fruits and vegetables that have very soft-skinned or soft leaves, so lettuce and berries, plums and things like that. They're sprayed with numerous pesticides and fertilizers to reduce all the pests and being eaten and things like that, and to increase production. So it's a tricky one. With the large population increase that we're seeing all over the world, it is something that kind of has to be done in order to feed everyone. We store most of our foods in plastics, especially our liquids, which further exposes us to these factors. And of course, there is the fact that due to London water being recycled, we're looking at everything kind of going through it, and a lot of chemicals and things that are in the water when it's recycled are removed. But the estrogen that's in oral contraceptives, taken by so many in the female population, it can't be removed. So we're kind of like sitting ducks, as it were. However, it's not all doom and gloom. We can each put a weeny bit of effort into reducing our exposure and maximizing our excretion levels by indulging in organic produce, refraining from buying everything in plastic packaging, and of course supporting the liver. So when you go out and buy vegetables, try and buy the loose ones in the organic shop, and take a cloth bag with you. And if you do need to buy bottled water because you don't have a proper filtration unit at home, then buy bottled water and decant it into glass. Glass is safe. So, supporting the livers, choose fasting programs, detox programs, support supplements, healthy eating regimes for long-term prospects can really help us to combat these issues. And, as I said, Nosh can offer you these things. And as I'm seeing who's listening to me, I recognize a few names, and I know you've been on some of your programs. I hope that you really benefited from them and enjoyed it. So moving on to the next issue that can retain unwanted weight is stress. Yeah, we all know what that one is. Stress can come from any number of places: work, home life, love life, the lack of love life, that irritating neighbour who insists on playing loud music all night, public transport, the lack of public transport, the constant noise and vibrations of the buzzing city around us, weddings, travelling, loss of a friend or a family member, getting a new dog. I mean, it could be anything. Not having a pair of matching shoes for your outfit. The list of potential stresses is endless, and some deal with it better than others. But we can all equip ourselves for the war on stress, arm yourselves, as it were. But why does stress do that? Why does it make us into this slightly larger people than we wish to be? Well, here's a very short explanation of how it works. So cortisol is the major stress word we hear thrown around in regards to stress. I found a definition of it in a medical dictionary to try and help us better understand what we're dealing with. Cortisol is, so what it said in this medical dictionary, cortisol is a major natural glucocorticoid elaborated in the adrenal cortex. It affects the metabolism of glucose, protein, and lipids, and has a mineral corticoid activity. So in the real world, what that means is cortisol is a hormone that's formed in the adrenal glands, which sit just on top of the kidneys. It plays a role in the metabolism of proteins, fats, and sugars, as well as having an effect on bodily functions involving minerals and vitamins. And minerals and vitamins are, in many cases used cofactors of enzymes that break down other things and are, responsible for many, many bodily processes, all bodily processes, in fact. And in times of stress, our bodies shift gear, as it were. They go from being relaxed, hanging loose, working slowly at their own pace and digesting foods, absorbing nutrients from foods consumed, to disregarding the whole digestive process and utilizing our nutrients in a high speeds to run away from a lion and catch a rabbit, as it were. So we go from this really mellow, I'm just going to sit here and have my lunch thing, to, oh my God, panic, we've got to run and climb a tree because the lion's going to eat us. But we don't have to live like that anymore. Our stress is different. It's no longer in these short, healthy bursts, but it's in much longer, drawn-out periods of time, years in many cases, tens of years in cases for some people. If we're constantly using up our nutrients for this stressful time, so because we're stressed, we kind of use everything up, and so it needs to be replenished. So if it's constantly used, everything, we use it up. But our bodies start to adapt, and they start to use our macro and micronutrients in different ways. We begin to exhaust the minerals and the vitamins we need to mop up the damage by everyday living, like the antioxidant vitamins such as vitamin C and vitamin E, the minerals that are used for mopping things up, magnesium and zinc. I mean, list goes on. And then there are all the phytonutrients as well, anthocyanidins, resveratrol, these are words that you hear thrown around, quercetin. So anyway, our bodies begin to think that we're not able to feed ourselves properly. So because they're incredibly efficient and they adapt so well, they start to pack away the energy we consume into stores in the forms of fat, because they're worried that the lions are going to come back and get us. So, that's kind of my short, and I don't know if I really made it very clear, but that's what chronic stress does. It makes our bodies shift gear, and instead of utilizing our food and energy consumed in the correct manner, we start retaining some and utilizing others. And, the ones that we utilize are the ones that we need the most when we're stressed. And so this leads to weight retention and, in many cases, weight gain. So that's with chronic stress. But how do you deal with this? How do you get around it? Nutrient-wise, you can start mega doses of blanket nutrients such as magnesium and B vitamins. You can go out and get yourself a really good B complex. But you want to be careful that you're getting your minerals and your vitamins in a natural format. So things like sulfides and oxides, if you look on the back on the ingredients, you don't want to be taking sulfides and oxides. You want to take things like malatates and citrates. Citrates are very common on the market, and they're not hugely expensive as well. Gluconate is a really good format as well. So yeah, there are those kind of things. And then we can also make lifestyle changes. So introducing things like Epsom salt baths. And Epsom salt baths are interesting because as you lie there soaking, there's magnesium in the salt, and it's absorbed through the skin whilst you soak, with your candles, being relaxed, listening to some nice music, reading a book, not being on your iPhone, not trying to read up some paper that you've got to do a presentation on the next day, just being with yourself. Things like walking outside in the greenery, doing some yoga, some soft light swimming, meditation, breathing exercises, things that move your body and your mind and oxygenate your body without causing a stress reaction, which is what we're trying to get away from. Eating well is really vital to stress reduction. I've discovered that on my own path to seeking a more stress-free life. It's highly effective, making sure that you don't go through stages of being really full and then really hungry, because this causes stress. When your blood sugar levels drop to a certain amount, your body releases adrenaline, which brings your blood sugar levels up, which gives you energy. So foods like almonds, chicken, turkey, lamb, cottage cheese, they're really good proteins, and they've got a protein called tryptophan in it, which is a precursor to serotonin. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter which is responsible for the feeling of contentment and relaxation. And so you can imagine it's a key player in stress reduction. So I've only got 1 minute left. I'm quickly going to shoot through very last part of what I wanted to talk about today on weight retention, which is food intolerances. Now, food intolerances cause inflammation and stress in the body. So as you can imagine, what we've talked about this whole time is stress. And if you're stressed out, then you're not absorbing correct nutrients. So, the whole thing is if you've got a balance of nutrients and you are absorbing everything correct, your body is going to be functioning properly, and you're going to be able to produce the correct amount of energy, and be able to therefore burn that energy off efficiently and produce more muscle fibers, and eventually get to your perfect weight. So I've run out of time now, but I really enjoyed this. I hope that it's enlightened you somewhat and made you think about how you will approach your day today, tomorrow, the next day, next week. Well, I hope that you have a really wonderful day. Bye-bye.